Are you a woman who is new to dating women? Or are you a queer woman who is re entering the world of dating after a long hiatus? Join Lavender Dating on a 2-day online workshop, January 25th and February 1st, 1 to 2:30 p.m. Central Time on Zoom, where you'll become better prepared to jump into the dating scene. Learn how to navigate dating apps, get clarity on your values, wants, and needs in relationship. Learn how to start and end connections, and much, much more. Don't put yourself out there unprepared. Tickets are available on Eventbrite or at lavenderdating.com. That's www.lavenderdating.com. Hey, queer friends and allies. Welcome to Season 6 of Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA+ stories. Here's your host, Anne-Marie Zanzal.
Hello, everybody, and welcome. It is January 3rd, right? 2025, and we are so excited to welcome you to Coming Out and Beyond, our 6th season. Here, I'm Anne-Marie Zanzal.
And I'm Barbara Rowlandson. Hello.
And we are your hosts today. And so before we get into 2025, we want to talk to you about our favorite episodes this year. And we each have 5 of them. We may agree on some of them, but we want you to go back, if you haven't already, and to listen to some of our incredible guests this year. And so without further ado, Barb, who's your first one?
Well, listen, I'm going to start right at the top for me. And it's actually a bit of a cheat, Anne-Marie, because she appeared in 2 podcasts last year. In episodes 10 and 17 of season 5, you had the incomparable Miriam Grace.
Mm-hmm.
And I just love Miriam. I think she's so wise. Like, she has so much wisdom, and she articulates the coming out later in life experience so beautifully. And I can remember when I first read one of her articles years ago now. And even though I had already kind of come out and, was confident in who I was and everything, to be able to read what she had to say about it, it gave me language to, like, for context for the experience. And I was like, yes, that's what this is. So in the episode 10, I believe it was just like talking about later in life experiences in a more general sense and common themes. But then an episode 17 was about estrangement, family.
Right, because I had estrangement with my second child, and we are on we're on the mend now. I spent Christmas with them, but I really wanted to talk to Miriam about that because so many of our later in life lesbians do have estrangement with one of their children. Some of them have it with all of their children, but it is really something we don't talk about, I think, because of shame. There's a piece of us that is like, if I don't, my kid is not talking to me because I did this to the family.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's a silent shame that many people in the later in life community don't talk about, but there are very complicated reasons why people become estranged to their children. And to bring comfort to you all who are listening and maybe dealing with something, this is rocketing out of control, even with people who are straight.
I was astonished to learn after this podcast came out that a full third of adults, straight, gay, no matter what, a full third of adults are estranged from a family member. So we need to normalize this.
Right.
Right?
Like, that can be one of our missions this year, Barb. We're going to normalize estrangement for you. Painful as it is a reality. And I don't know what's going on with society. I think I have some clues about that. And just to be clear, Barb and I are not talking about estrangement from people who are toxic and are harmful to you.
Right.
Like people that have done you harm, whether it is emotionally, sexually, or physically. We honor and respect all that. We are talking about when estrangement comes out of the blue and you're just not expecting it, or it's been hinted at for a while and then all of a sudden it happens. So I love that episode. So thank you for bringing that up.
Okay, it's your go. So
It's gonna go.
we're gonna
So
go to one.
put two of them in one.
Okay.
So I interviewed the lovely Philip Hedrick. I'm sorry, I pronounced his name wrong. And Wes Schmitz. Both Philip and Wes did the podcast. It's no longer there. It's called Two Bottles Deep. And what they were trying to do is to talk about, like, to explain the queer community to straight people and straight allies. They're local Nashville. I think of them as boys. They're both men. They're in their 50 and 40 something. But the friendship that developed between us as I went on their podcast a couple of times, and they both have come on to my podcast, was just delightful. And it was just, honestly, I'm going to say it selfishly. They were just delightful to talk to and to get to know better. And also to hear Philip's story, because Philip grew up in a religious cult. And what was amazing about him was his patience and his love for his mother and father, and his ability to give them space as they process the fact that their son was gay. And in their faith tradition, that is a sin. And so his parents are wonderful. They love him. He's very much part of their lives. But to hear that story and to hear about how he handled coming out in the 90s as a gay boy from a very strict religious tradition, which he still thinks about very fondly. I mean, he had, even though it was a cult, it was a cult based on, a cult is a cult. And so I don't want to, let me think about this. It was, he experienced a lot of love in his childhood.
There are some things that he cherishes that he learned growing up. Nothing's ever really black and white, is it? And I think his experience really illustrates that, because he did get some positive stuff out of his faith tradition. He didn't stick with it because it wasn't, entirely healthy for him. But also what was interesting about his story is how his parents, even though they had this very rigid belief, but they opened themselves up to make love, continuing to love and accept their son possible.
And to grow.
Yeah.
Yeah, his parents used it as an opportunity for growth. So, hearing Philip's story was just, I really, really enjoyed that. He was just such a lovely person, and I was so happy. And he's also a comedian here. So if you're looking in Nashville and you want to support his burgeoning career, at 50, you're never too late to do anything. Look for him at Zanies or something like that. All right, your turn.
Okay, so the next one I'm going to pick is the incredible story of Rhonda and Jonda.
I know.
Oh my God. I mean, first of all, what are the chances you get identical twin sisters who also are both lesbians who come out later in life?
Right. And there's a lot of identical twins are both queer. That's not the unusual thing. The unusual thing is that they both were married to men and both came out later in life.
And then, of course, went on to open one of the most epic lesbian bars.
Yes. And we never did our second part with that. Maybe we can do that this year. But what ended up happening is, if you are in Nashville, everybody knows Rhonda and Jonda. They are sisters that are twins, and the joke is my wife, whose name is Tanda, is the third one. Rhonda, Jonda, and Tanda. It's a Southern thing, folks. And so what I didn't know was Rhonda's story. I had no idea. And our podcast was the first time she talked publicly about everything she went through. And I am sure I am sure she was so delighted to tell the story, and it felt so relieving for her
Mhm.
about what she went through in the late 80s, early 90s, trying to retain custody of her children from a husband and a mother that was bent on punishing her.
Mhm. Yeah, what adversity she faced. And
Mhm.
for years and years and years, traveling back and forth to go see her children begging her to, like, please, can I come with you? Like, it broke my heart, but also what an incredible story of resilience. And also,
Mhm.
they had each other. Like these two
Mhm.
sisters who really leaned into each other to support each other. I really encourage anybody who might be struggling with anything, listen to that podcast, because I'm telling you, when you hear, like, I find when I listen to other people's stories of triumphing over adversity, it gives me a lot of hope that I can deal with anything that comes my way, right? Even if it's hard. And that's what I really felt when I listened to their story. It was like I was just so amazed by everything that they had overcome.
Mhm. I really was too. For me, so that's like one. We'll count that for both of us.
Okay. Okay.
Also like talking to Anne Russo, and I'm going to invite her this year. Anne Russo works with people, and she's a therapist, but she has a master's in religion, and so we sort of teetered and tottered on the spiritual religious side of being queer, but we never got there. She was raised by two gay parents. No, wait a minute. No, one gay parent. Her dad came out as gay when she was little, and then her mother and him and her father's partner created a family. And
Yeah.
so she grew up in a very sex positive family, very unreligious, and sort of forged her own path. And she does identify as queer. I believe she's a lesbian. It's just such an interesting path because she grew up exactly like how so many of us worry about our kids, right? And
Hmm.
Anne, is proof that everything's going to be okay. And
Hmm.
also, I really want to have Anne back to really dive into faith and religion and stuff like that. So she'll be back this season. But that was one of my favorite because it like that stuff is what excites me. I like talking about spirituality. I like talking about faith. Like talking about religion. And a lot of times we don't do that in the queer community because it's such a sensitive subject. And so Anne and I will approach it sensitively when we do our next episode sometime this year.
I love that you're leaning more into the spirituality pieces. You're right. There is sort of a deficiency, and it's so needed, especially now. Times are really tough. And I think we need to sort of buttress ourselves in every way, possible way that we can. And leaning into spirituality is one of those things, right? I
Mhm.
also love the flexibility about Anne's story, like how she was raised. And again, like Wes's parents, you know, like nothing has to be black and white. We can adapt, we can change, we can have families that look different than other families, and it's okay.
Right. And I think a lot of, especially with the older people that we've talked to, except for a couple of people, a lot of them, their families had a lot of hard times when they first came out, but now everything is fine. And I think that sometimes, we have said that we say this to our clients a lot, Barb, but, we know this about ourselves for a really, 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 really long time, a lot of times before we ever say anything to anybody. And so, think about how long it's taken us to process this stuff.
Right?
So sometimes we have to give family members, even kids, a little space for them to come to their own conclusions about
Hmm.
everything.
Hmm.
And, I think there's this desire for moms to fix, 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 especially kids. But sometimes you just have to let your children go and let them process their stuff their own way and trust that they may come back or be okay if things are not the way they used to be. And
Hmm.
we're going to talk a lot about that this year too.
Good, good. All right, are we ready for the next one?
Uh-huh.
I'm going to pick my best roommate ever, Jill Holiday. Love that girl. Oh my God, she is something else. That her story again, perseverance. Somebody who became a mom in high
Hmm.
school, um, who emerged from some conservative faith, from
And
a
a very
long
abusive marriage.
abusive marriage, long-standing marriage. And really, wow, I think what strikes me about Jill's story is her courage. It's so inspiring. And also, she did something in her life that I wish I had done. She changed her name.
Yes.
And I love that. I love that for her, and the whole story about what the judge said to her when she changed her name. And
What was the story? Okay, so couple points of clarification. Jill came to our Provincetown weekend and she helped, but she was Pep's roommate. So they're not roommates full time. They're not in a relationship. They were just roommates for a week.
gosh, yes, like maybe clarify that. Yeah, temporary roommates on a vacation. Yes.
So Jill hiked the AT, and that's the Appalachian Trail. And even that story is resilient. She had to go back 3 times to complete the whole thing, but she did it. And also, too, so on the trail, she was known as Holiday because everybody gets a trail name. And so when she came out, she did not want to keep her married name. Her family name was very problematic. She does have parents that are very challenging even now, and they've never, ever, gotten to the point of love and acceptance, but that's just who they are. And so she wanted to change her name to her trail name. So her name is now Jill Holiday. And what did the judge, I don't remember, what did the judge say to her?
Well, just the way she tells it, I can't do it any justice. So please tune into this episode. And it's episode, 28. The judge basically says to her, Miss Holiday, have a nice life. And it's just like, oh my God.
Oh, that's so nice.
She really seized, this is an example of a person who really seized control of her future. And did it even though it was really challenging. And I like to use the word challenging instead of hard. And it was really challenging, right? She had a lot of things that she had to overcome. Physical injury, right? She got injured like twice on the Appalachian Trail, I think. All of the things. She's a very inspiring figure. Yeah, I really love.
For me, another episode for me was the very first one of last year, number 1, with her name is Dr. Tina Shermer Sellers, and we really dove into purity culture and how purity culture has affected a generation of formerly conservative religious people, whether they're former or not, and how much it has messed with people's sexuality, whether they're gay or straight. And that subject is really, really fascinating to me. So we're gonna sort of dive into that again this year and talk about it a little bit more. It was okay. So this is completely personal. Is that in my work with our clients, I saw that over and over again. So talking to Dr. Tina affirmed what I saw, and so now I know there's scientific basis behind what I was observing anecdotally. So it was just nice to get some real confirmation about how effed up purity culture is. And if you're somebody that has really struggled with overcoming purity culture, I'm going to tell you Lotus Community Coaching is really good for you to join because we can help you with that too. But that was just such an eye-opening show. It just fascinates me.
Totally fascinating
me.
And astonishing. I mean, as somebody who's grown up in Canada where we don't have as much of that like conservative faith religion up here. I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but not in the way that it does south of the border. It truly, as I, started doing this work with you, astonished me how many of our participants in Lotus Community Coaching have been impacted by purity culture. And it leaves a mark.
It absolutely leaves a mark. And also the child rearing of evangelical culture leaves a mark as well in conservative culture. The rod spoil the child, it's just been really, really fascinating. And as we go through next year, we're really going to talk a little bit more about religious trauma, faith, all those things that really really affect our community so much more than we talk about.
Hmm.
Because what ends up happening is there are the people that go figure it out and do the deconstruction work and then figure out how they're going to believe and what they're going to believe. But then there's people that just reject everything spiritual and everything religious
Yeah.
because of what has happened to them. And we understand that, but we are spiritual beings having a human experience. So we need to nurture that part of ourselves.
Hmm.
And it doesn't have to be in a church. I'm an ordained minister. A lot of my spirituality doesn't happen in the church. And by the way, I don't go to church anymore, but a lot of my spirituality happens in my communication with people, in meditation, in being outside, and in reading. Like I read a lot of pieces about
Yeah.
um like how to manage your life and things that you need to think about and like how to not react to people, things like that. And from a spiritual perspective. And so I really, really, am looking forward to that coming up
Well,
this year.
totally, totally. I am feeling you when you say, like, faith traditions do not have exclusivity on spirituality.
Yes. And Barb is a humanist officiant. And so,
Right.
but I would love to dive in with you sometime. And we've
Right.
never really talked about this, but Barb identifies as, we've never talked about it. I don't know why, but she identifies as a humanist. And I would really like to talk to you about that. So we're going to put you on the list to talk about what humanism is and what a humanist officiant does, and also what your belief system is, because I know essentially you don't believe in a higher power, correct?
Secular humanism, I mean, the secular kind of says it all, but
Hmm.
it doesn't mean that, humanists tend to work really hard at like make meaning of experiences. And to me, humanism is about the power of people, belief in people and what we're capable of, and also stewardship of the earth. So we can totally get, more
Okay.
into that.
And also, so Barb's not, she's also on the board of humanism in some province in
Ontario.
Canada. Is it your province?
It's in Ontario, yeah.
Okay. So we will get into that and talk about humanism, because we believe that spirituality is also a tool that you can use to manage being queer in this world. And also, if you're in the process of coming out, it is a way to help you manage all the many, many feelings and many emotions that you're going.
Mhm.
All right,
Mhm.
Barb, give me one more.
Okay, I'll give you one more, and I'm going to pick again. I'm picking these stories of resilience. Recently, just a couple of weeks ago, you had Karen Soltz on the
Hmm.
show, and the very same day, I downloaded her ebook and I listened to it almost like by the next day. I had finished it. Wow, what an incredible story of triumph over a lot of adversity. So Karen, of course, was an officer in the Navy during Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Actually, she joined before that, and she is a lesbian. So she had to conceal her sexual identity and navigate her personal relationships and romantic relationship at a time when she couldn't really be public with it. She had her community of people, all just the multifaceted things that she had to deal with, things that we would never even think about when we are a minority operating within a system of oppression.
Hmm.
And Karen also overcame alcoholism, and that was a big part of her story, and some very tragic loss as well. So, very, very compelling story of
Hmm.
resilience.
Hmm.
Really loved that one. Yeah.
And riffing off on that theme, after the election, I had 3 old gays.
Yes.
And we talked about resilience because, okay, so they were my wife, a friend of hers. I can't remember,
Pam
Pam.
and Robert. Yeah.
Yeah, Pam and Robert. And Tanda, my wife, has known them forever. It was right after the election, and people were really, really upset because we're obviously worried about what is going to happen coming up next year and the year after and the year after and the year after.
Right.
And so we're obviously worried. And it was really nice to get the perspective from people who have been down this road before. And, just because the political climate may change, or all of a sudden, like, we may have problems seeing queer content or queer shows or any of those things, doesn't mean that queer people go away.
That's
We
right.
are still going to be here. If they knock out all the social media, Barb and I will still be here doing the work that we do. So it was just really nice to have their perspective. It made me calmer, honestly, once I listened, talked to them and stuff like that, because they've been through this. And that whole conversation started with John Sovic, who was in season 4, but he got sick, so he couldn't come on this podcast. And so we got Robert to fill in at the last minute. But John was texting me, if you've been out for a while, you will have people text you, especially when something political is happening, to say, hey, how you're doing? How you feeling? And so John and I were texting, and he said to me, this is not my first less than rodeo.
Yes.
And I was like, and so that was the brainchild for that episode, because we have a lot of gay people that have come out in the last 10 years, 15 years, where the less than wasn't as less than as it was 40 years ago. And so we really wanted to highlight people that have had that experience, because if we go backwards, and I pray to the universe that we do not, but if we go backwards, how are you going to live into your queerness? And so that was really, really great advice for people in that episode. So it's off to our old gays.
I feel like, yeah, I had that episode on my list as well. And yeah, it underscores tenacity. And I feel like that episode, if you listen to it and you're feeling a little bit down about, the political future and the climate, let it light a fire under you.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah, and it did for me too. It just absolutely made me realize, like, yes, we're still here. We're still queer. We're not going anywhere. People have come before us. They've lived through another pandemic, AIDS pandemic, other really challenging times fighting for marriage equality. And we're a tenacious group.
We are a tenacious group.
We go through a lot. And I think once, certainly it's been part of my life experience, is when you walk through the fire enough times, you become fireproof.
Absolutely. And when you go through that fire, you do become more tenacious, right?
Absolutely. Yes. So it's a good reminder for us that, yes, take a moment to grieve, to be sad, feel your feels, but don't let it stop you in your tracks, because we all have to move forward.
Right. So if you are interested in receiving a list of everything that we've talked about, please go on my website, AnneMarieZanzal.com, scroll down to the bottom of the page and fill out the little information form, because we have an amazing newsletter for people coming out, people who are queer. We offer all kinds of programs. We offer all kinds of opportunities. So go sign up for that newsletter. And in that newsletter, we will have the list of what we talked about today. And so we want to talk about what's coming up in 2025 for you. And we're really excited about this, because we're going to switch things up a little bit. And so first of all, the good news, the lovely Barbara Rowlandson is going to be joining me much more often, because did you know Barb is a coach in Lotus Community Coaching, and she's also going to branch out for us and do a little bit more with dating. So we do have an event coming up called for our Lavender Dating, and it's called Women Loving Women Online Dating. You can find it on Eventbrite. We'll also put the link on my website. And if you sign up for the newsletter, guess what? You get the link sent to you. But Barb is going to tell our audience today about a little bit. No, let me backtrack a little bit. Let's talk about what we're going to be doing this year. And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit about that. Because you know me, folks, I always go off on these tangents, and I'm trying to be much more focused this year. So Barbara's going to be my conversation partner. We're going to talk about dating. We're going to have episodes dedicated to dating and how you can date, and questions people have about dating, when it's a good romance, when it's a bad romance. We're going to focus on that a little bit more this year. We're also going to focus on, because we get continuous themes in Lotus Community Coaching.
Mhm.
which is our coaching for women coming out later in life. And so we are going to explore these themes together so that if they come up in your life as a queer person, then you will have somebody talking about it and in hearing our perspective and maybe giving you some tips about how you can deal with those things. Right, Barb?
Mhm. Mhm. We do see, I mean, that not everybody's experience is identical, but there are so many parallels for that coming out later in life experience, and we see the same things come up over and over again. A lot of it has to do with sexual identity, but also overall self. Like,
Mhm.
who am I? How do I matter? Where do I fit in? There's lots of feelings of guilt and responsibility that come along with the coming out process as well. And there's just so much self discovery that happens when you decide to change your life midlife, right?
Right. And also, too, there's common themes, especially with our women who are moms.
Hmm.
And actually, no, I actually saw one the other day with one of our old clients that she posted about on Facebook, and she's never been married, no kids. But one of the themes was like, I'm at the holidays with my family, and no one's mentioning that I'm gay or that I have a girlfriend.
Hmm.
And so that is a real common theme that comes up within our community all the time. But with the moms, there are continuously the same themes that come up again and again. Like, for example, who am I now that I've accepted this part of my identity? Who am I now if one of my kids is not talking about to me?
Hmm.
All those questions. Oh, who am I now? My family's throwing their holiday Christmas party and I'm not there. And I used to be the person that arranged that party. All those things are really normal in the queer experience, whether you're coming out late or just queer and you came out when you were 16. All of those experiences are normal. And we want to talk about them and highlight them and expose them to shared common humanity. Because when you realize you're not the only person who's experiencing this, it makes everything a lot easier.
Completely. Yeah. You don't feel so isolated in your challenges, right? So
Mhm.
I love that we're leaning into that and exploring those other themes. What else are we going to be talking about? We're talking about
Oh, my
spirituality.
has had a huge project that she's been working on since July. So, long story short, I have my business partner, Anna MP, and I have partnered with Dr. Suzanne, who is an expert in lesbian relationships. She's a psychologist. Her specialty is lesbian relationships. And Barb has been putting together this incredible course that we are going to have available for each other. Robin wrote the course and she recorded the course, but we just updated it and to make it more watchable for people that are experiencing this. And Barb has become the expert in finding social media that reflects queer experience.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely. Holy smokes. Yeah, it makes you realize like how, it underscores the marginalization, I think,
Yeah.
and how we are not properly represented in media for sure, putting together this course. But despite that, I feel like the material, and by the way, like I'm just zhuzhing it up. I'm just barbarizing it, as we
Yeah.
say. Making it pretty.
It's
The
all
material is so good,
just
people.
so good.
You are in a relationship, if you're a woman in a relationship with another woman, just get the course. Just get the course.
Well, even if you're single, get the course.
It
It
is so good.
explains so much. Like every time Barb and I, so there's 14 episodes or chapters. Every time Barb and I do one together, because I'm sort of the translator of Robin's stuff, and then Barb is putting it together. And because we're a team, Anna's on the back end getting it all connected so that we can make it available to people. And every time Barb and I'm like, oh, this one is so good. I love this one because it talks about why we have, okay, everyone, lesbians have the number one divorce rate.
Mhm.
We are 72% likely to get divorced. And there are really, really strong reasons why. And guess what? It's not your fault. It's me. So the course is not ready yet. We'll probably do about a month on this podcast, talking to Robin and everything like that, to get you guys ready for the course. That when it's ready, we'll let you know. I'm hoping by February. We've learned so much putting this course together, and we realize it takes a heck of a lot longer than we ever thought it was.
Yeah, partly because of that media challenge, for sure.
Well, the media challenge, and also this is sort of like a second thing we're doing. So it's just like it's a side hustle right now. So putting this together is what we do part time.
It is gold. It is a treasure trove. And if you've ever had a failed relationship before and you're trying to put it in context and understand what happened going through these lessons, I will guarantee you will get clarity. There's no question. It really just hones in on the reasons why our relationships, first of all, why they bond in the way they do. We talk about lesbian breakups, but I think for a lot of the same reasons that lesbians come together and create these like intense relationships and bonds, the same kinds of things that bring us together also can be the things that tear us apart. So I really, 5 out of 5 stars recommend, not just because I made the videos.
It's Robin's work. Basically, we were basically marketing it and we're creating it, but it's honestly Robin's work. We're just the facilitators, I guess I would call that. We're the facilitators to get this important message out. And so the last thing we're going to talk about this year is that one of my intentions for this year is to show my spiritual side more. People in Lotus Community Coaching have heard me talk about that for the last month or so. And one of the things that I don't show very often is my deeply spiritual side. And so I have been like pondering why I don't do that, you know? And so I have decided to lean into that a little bit more this year because I have a deep and an expansive spirituality. And I have done a lot of thinking about this stuff in my 60 years of life and also leaning into the fact that I'm 60 and not being ashamed of it. And I really want to talk to some people that have done that work. And so we're going to be inviting queer people who on the show who are going to talk a little bit about their coming out experience. But then we're going to really, really dive into faith, dive into spirituality. And I really would, if you are somebody who is not Christian, because I have lots of Christian people that I can reach out to, but I really would love to talk to somebody who's a rabbi. I would love to talk to somebody who may be Muslim. I would love to talk to somebody who may be Hindu. And all the other religions that are out there, but that are not the ones that are initially on everybody's tongue. If you're a Buddhist, I would love to talk to you. So please reach out to me go through my website. You can reach through me there, Anne-MarieZanzal.com, and let me know that you'd be interested in coming on the podcast because I really want to lean into talking about spirituality. And so probably about once a month, once every 6 weeks, we will have somebody on the podcast that will be talking about that. And I'll give Barb the day off, or maybe Barb will come and join me and ask her questions because since Barb is a humanist and my background is Christian Buddhism, we both have very different perspectives. So probably the kinds of questions we have for this podcast might be very different. And, so Barb, we're just thinking out loud here. So maybe Barb will be joining me on those podcasts as well.
Sure.
And then the last thing is that we have been noticing that the podcast has been really starting, because I love people's stories. I give them space to speak, but sometimes they go on a long time and we recognize that. So if we have a podcast that is over 45 minutes long, we will probably split it into 2. So you'll get a part 1 and a part 2, but we're going to really work hard to keep our podcast below 45 minutes. I think we've done that today, but we're going to work hard to do that so that you can listen to it on a walk. You can listen to it on a drive to work. And we also want to ask a favor of you now. If you like this podcast, if you love listening to Barb, you love listening to me, can you please follow? Please like it. Please download a podcast. Please review it. If it's a great podcast, if you can spend 5 minutes going to review it and saying, I love this podcast. Because you know what? Unfortunately, because I'm queer, sometimes I get people do 1 stars because I'm queer. And they say they say nasty things. So if you could support us that way, because we would love to get the word out about the amazing work we're doing in Lotus Community Coaching, about the work we're doing in Lavender Dating, about the upcoming course with Robin, about my course, I Think I Might Not Be Straight. All of that information, we really want to get it out there to the people who need it. So we want to thank you for being a part of our community. Thank you for listening to the podcast. And we're really excited about season 6.
So excited to cover all of these different things and take things in a new direction too. This is going to be a really amazing year. I feel it. And change is good, right?
Change is good. And Barb's dog is desperately trying to get in. And so if you hear some like Steph,
I'm so sorry.
her pup really wants to get in and give her some love. So thank you for being a part of Coming Out and Beyond LGBTQIA plus stories. If you would like to be on the podcast, if there's something that you think you can contribute to this, please reach out to us. We've had former clients that have come on this podcast. So here's to 2025. Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year. Yeah.
You've been listening to Coming Out and Beyond, LGBTQIA plus stories with Anne-Marie Zanzal. New episodes of the Coming Out and Beyond podcast drop every other Friday. You can tune in at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, and at annemariezanzal.com. Be sure to hit subscribe when tuning in so you never miss an episode. And for more resources, articles, videos, and a free downloadable guide for coming out later in life, visit annemariezanzal.com.